The rain had been falling for hours. By midnight, most people in the small Tennessee town had already locked their doors, turned off their lights, and hoped the storm would pass before morning. But outside, the streets were beginning to disappear beneath rising floodwaters. Gutters overflowed, side roads vanished under dark, moving water, and somewhere in the middle of that storm, a family was trapped inside a car that was slowly being swallowed by the flood. The 911 call came in fast and panicked. A vehicle trapped in rushing water, multiple occupants inside, children possibly involved. For the officers on duty that night, it was the kind of call that changes everything in seconds. When Sergeant John Banner and Officer Brandon Ruiz arrived, the situation was already turning catastrophic. The water had risen far beyond the road, pushing violently against the stranded vehicle. Rain hammered against the patrol car as the officers stepped out into knee-deep water, barely able to hear each other over the sound of the storm. Inside the trapped vehicle was a terrified family, watching the water rise inch by inch. And the worst part was that the current was getting stronger every minute. The officers immediately tried to reach the vehicle, but the floodwater was moving too fast. One wrong step, and anyone in that water could be swept away. The darkness made everything worse. Streetlights reflected across the surface of the flood, making it nearly impossible to judge depth or movement. The family inside the car had nowhere to go. Opening the doors too early could allow water to rush inside, but staying inside too long could turn the vehicle into a coffin. For a moment, the officers faced a problem with no obvious solution. Backup was still minutes away, the storm was getting worse, and the water kept rising. Then, Sergeant Banner noticed something inside one of the patrol vehicles. Jumper cables. Not rescue ropes, not emergency rescue equipment, just ordinary jumper cables. In another moment, most people would have ignored them completely. But this is what separates ordinary people from officers willing to make impossible decisions under pressure. While most people freeze in chaos, these officers started thinking fast. They quickly connected the cables together, creating a makeshift lifeline in the middle of the flood. It wasn't designed for rescue work, and there was no guarantee it would hold, but it was the only option they had. Sometimes courage means acting before you even know whether the plan will work. Holding on to the cables, the officers pushed themselves into the freezing current, fighting against the force of the water one step at a time. The flood slammed against their legs as they moved toward the trapped family. The patrol lights flashing behind them reflected across the black water, turning the entire street into something that looked more like a disaster zone than an American neighborhood. Inside the vehicle, panic was growing. Children cried as water climbed higher along the doors, and the family had no way of knowing whether rescue would arrive in time. Through the rain, all they could see were flashing lights and silhouettes slowly moving toward them through the storm. Finally, the officers reached the car. Working against the current, they began pulling the family out one by one, guiding them back through the floodwaters using the improvised cable line. Every trip carried risk. One slip could have sent someone into the darkness beneath the flood. But the officers never stopped. By the end of the rescue, the entire family made it out alive. No military gear, no special rescue boats, and no dramatic Hollywood moment. Just two American police officers standing in freezing floodwater in the middle of the night, refusing to let strangers die. And maybe that's what makes stories like this matter so much. Because on that night, there were no cameras, no crowds, and no guarantee anyone would even remember their names afterward. There was only a dangerous storm, a trapped family, and two officers willing to walk directly into chaos to save people they had never met before. This is the side of policing most people never see. Not headlines, not politics, and not internet arguments. Just ordinary men and women making impossible decisions when someone else's life depends on it. Across America, thousands of officers are working night shifts at this very moment. Most people will never know their names, and most will never appear on television. But every night, they answer calls knowing they may be stepping directly into danger for complete strangers. And sometimes, all that stands between a family and tragedy is the courage of the officer who shows up. That night in Tennessee, a family went home alive because 2 officers refused to give up. And somewhere beneath the sound of rain and sirens, America showed its best side once again.